upset because people, feel that their way of life is being threatened. Their marriages are not stable, their families are not stable.
Yeah, it is. It's actually a crisis. It's an absolute crisis. Even when it comes to gender roles, gender identity, it's come to a point where the liberals even disagree. To which extent do you stop? One identifying themselves as all kinds of stuff, non-binary. So it is heading somewhere where it shouldn't be. But you did say that the West. I don't know. Did you say the West or the United Kingdom?
Well, I think the West in general, because the official religion of the West is Christianity.
Yes.
But it was replaced by liberalism.
Yes.
A few centuries ago, and liberalism is itself breaking down.
Yes, exactly. That's what's happening. And you are pro-Sharia to a certain extent, I think. I do want to go into that as well. What we believe is that every human being requires a religion. So now when we're talking to the Western world, a lot of the Western world, or people who are atheists, they claim they don't believe in a higher being and that they do not follow religion. But I oppose that, because I believe the fact that they're an atheist, every human being, like there was a famous philosopher who said that man is born free but in shackles everywhere. So we believe that everyone has a religion. Even if you're an atheist, that is your religion. So one way or another, you are going to obey some kind of a law and legislation. Either that is God's law or that is not God's law, but it is some form of a law. So where do you think, for example, when the family unit, like I read an interesting book, which I don't know if you've read this before, Claire, it's called Beauty Sick. No. I'm quite obsessed with it. I talk about it a lot, actually. Even my friends are like, come on, you can read another book. But it just talks about how women are made to feel ugly, insecure. To a certain point, there is a woman in here who talks about, feeling so ugly that she would sleep around with men because she felt devalued. But how do you feel that, in general, the family unit is under attack?
Well, in the olden days, the idea of having sex was you would only have sex with somebody you're married to, and now this
promiscuity.
The price of sex is so cheap now.
Yes.
So people think that they can get away with it, but it damages them. It damages their ability to bond with each other, men and women. If you've had lots of partners, you always think there's something better around the corner.
Exactly. Carry on.
And so. With this kind of attitude, you will treat all relationships as, ultimately disposable, and you won't settle down because in the back of your mind you think there's something better around the corner. You'll always be discontented with whoever you manage to find.
There are studies that show that people who are in promiscuous marriages and relationships tend to have failed marriages. And like you said before, I believe that having sex outside of marriage and dating is the biggest fraud for females. Yes, men do get affected as well, but if you look at it from a spectrum, is that men are visual creatures. You do not see women going and buying men's magazines to look at men's thighs or legs. You don't do that. But men will do that. Like, for example, you have strip clubs. Yeah. You have, for example, pornography. You do have magazines and all this kind of. Men are visual creatures. That's why God Almighty tells us in the Quran that tell the believing men first to lower the gaze. And you know it. Look, wow, that's actually very powerful. She knows.
I'm telling you.
So why lower the gaze? Because there are more. Look, for example, we're married. Yeah. There are more handsome men than me and him.
Yeah.
And there are more beautiful women than our wives. The point is the following. If we don't lower our gaze, for example, firstly, it shows the respect to the opposite gender. So it doesn't matter how she's dressed, by the way. People have this notion that Islam says, if she's dressed inappropriately, you can look at her and mistreat her. But if she's dressed in an abaya, no, excuse me. If she's dressed up in a bikini or in a niqab, I have to lower my gaze, period. Yeah. And that comes with, like I said before, the heart doesn't desire what the eyes don't see. So if I am too busy looking around, I'm not going to be happy with my wife. Yeah. I'm too busy looking. Oh, look at her. She's got this. Shit. So the thing is here, it starts from Islam deals with it from a micro level to a macro level, because the way it does it says the state that we live in. For example, women being objectified, that shouldn't be allowed. Having sex before marriage. So it starts from the top to the bottom, and the bottom is what? Lowering the gaze. Yeah. The very top is what fixes society as a whole. Because what happens is a lot of people come and say to me, when it comes to rape, they say, well, girls in abaya get raped or in niqab get raped. We say, well, nobody said that doesn't happen. We're not saying the rapist only targets girls who are dressed up in a certain way. Even in today's, even though you can still say a woman who's dressed up in a modest way, and this doesn't give right to anybody. Rape is rape, regardless who it is. The point is this: we live in a society where corruption is in such a level that these men are indoctrinated to act like animals. So it doesn't even matter now how you dress. Niqab, they have fetishes. You've got pornography, they've got, fetishes. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So in a nutshell, how do you find Islam's point of view, the Sharia, how it deals with the marriage and opposite partners treating each other? What? Because
just before we do that as well, I just want to add something very interesting, because there might be some feminists watching.
Yeah.
So there's this scholar called John Badger.
Okay.
Who died 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And he has this thing called the gaze.
Okay.
He talks about the gaze.
The male gaze.
The male gaze.
Gaze, yeah, not Gays.
Yeah. The male gaze.
Yes.
And he talks about how Western European art, for example, has looked at females and has painted female in nudity.
Yes.
And the way the painting looks at the female, it's a very male gaze focused perspective. When you look at, for example, I can't think of any images now, but there are these certain Renaissance paintings where the females are very naked, and that's not painted for females. It's painted from the gaze of a man. So I think what Islam really talks about is that very particular gaze, that feminists understood that the male gaze dominates us. And what feminists have tried to do is to hijack, and this is why we have in the 60s like sexual freedom and free love, of like, we own our own bodies, you cannot control us anymore. But to this day, I feel like the male gaze is still very prevalent, hence why we have these issues with social media and all these
the best way to attract male attention is to show off more.
Yeah.
And I think I forget the name of the YouTuber, but he was saying, these days in societies where women are feeling particularly desperate for the few good men there are, they will show more, more quickly in order to, and they're more prepared to make the move, and that will cheapen them and create a cycle of, women having to, work harder to get a decent man.
What is actually quite interesting, if I may add just quickly, is that I've read this very long study on why young people don't have as much sex anymore as
that's a new phenomenon, by the way. That's a new phenomenon.
One of the reasons is to do because of the easy access to pornography.
Yes.
The easy access to these, like the hookup culture.
Yes.
Just sleeping with someone has sort of distanced us from each other. So this whole talk about freedom came with a price tag, a heavy price tag.
Yeah.
And I want to read something to you from this book here. So this woman, her name is Renee Engelin, she done a study. So in this study, she was talking about women who are really if they had the ideal body, how would they feel? So this is what she says, I quote, so many researchers have studied what the ideal woman looks like according to our society standards. Take a moment to think about what this cultural ideal woman looks like and describe her. This is what she's asking the participants. Now, please take a moment to imagine that you look just like the woman you just described. Think about the ways in which you would believe your life would be different if you looked like this woman. How would that change? How would that change for you? This is what they said, The response was so upsetting that I considered stopping the study early.
Wow.
One young woman told us that if she could just be beautiful, she would finally be able to focus on her inner abilities and talent. Another said she might genuinely feel happy most of the time instead of just faking it. A different young woman explained that if she could just look the way our culture wants women to look, she would never had an eating disorder, causing stress on everyone around her that loves her but still hurt. Over 70% of women in the study said they'll be treated better by others if they look like the beauty ideal. That is to me a pandemic. That is to me shocking. And it is unbelievable that in today's time we have individuals who are capitalizing on Islamophobia and focusing on about women's hijab that are oppressed wearing the hijab. There is a pandemic of women, millions of them, who feel insecure that in this book I read, they starve themselves. As you may know, in Ramadan we fast from the sunrise to sunset. There are girls in this book that are getting an apple and cutting it to 8 pieces so they can have one apple every hour so they don't feel hungry. They are starving themselves. They are not concentrating in their inner abilities by being a human being. And they are too focused on what? How do I look beautiful? And that to me is destroying. And that's the reason why I believe we have pandemic of mental health problems, because these women want to have the ideal body, but the ideal body is rigged. It doesn't exist. And it's saddening. I believe that plays a fundamental role. Do you think in women, for example, as a woman, do you not feel like that feels a fundamental role in insecurity, in focusing on the wrong areas where you can be focusing in your career, in yourself, self-motivation, etc.?
Sorry, the question was...
Do you not feel like what the studies show, that women, for example, they are so focused on their beauty, they are neglecting a big part of their life, which is
their
themselves.
personality,
Themselves.
their character.
They're human. They're a human being.
Yes, and you know, it's all distorted and becomes a kind of obsessive compulsive disorder. And also the availability of cosmetic surgery makes, you know, the older woman thinking, well, I've had a boob job, I deserve a better quality of boyfriend, and they don't get it. You know, and they spend thousands of pounds, and, you know, and they still don't get it. And they will end up, you know, bitter and hating men and voting against the interests of men. Because I think fundamentally Western women hate Western men for not staying with them, for not fathering legitimate children with them.
And this causes, because what happens is when you have men who are having sex with, there are some men who have sex with hundreds of women. What they don't realize is in these shows, like, you know, like the Jerry Springer show, they have this thing where they realize, they do a DNA test and they find out that these two people who have been in a relationship are brother and sister all along. Because when you have promiscuous relationships, you're sleeping with everyone, and these people don't know that you might have two people who are falling in love with each other who are actually brother and sister. You know,
or something very disturbing. What do you think about the whole red pill community?
That's another extreme.
Like,
you mean men who don't want to have anything to do with women?
Yes, absolutely, and that's another extreme.
Well, it's a reaction against feminism, but it's unsustainable because then, you know, if you don't have, you won't have the next generation.
Claire, what advice would you give to young women, Western young women? And when we say Western, we're talking about Muslim women as well, you know, because at the end of the day, we live in the Western world here, you know. These things do affect the Muslim woman as well, you know. We do have the whole trend of, you know, for example, be it hijab being tightened a certain way. And by the way, hijab is for both men and women, you know. We do see men as well, because we need to cover from our navel to our knee. And we do see a lot of men who are, you know, going topless, etc., which is not permissible as well. But we can see, for example, the hijab, like we have females who, sisters, I saw a pandemic, I'll be honest, bruv. I've been observing, I go out with my wife, I've seen a lot of girls starting to, the hijab is going like backwards, and I'm thinking, bruv, why? And it's influences as well. What advice would you give to the young girls that are watching this when it comes to getting into a relationship and what impact it has on them in the long run?
What do you mean?
Like, what kind of advice would you give them? Like, if there's somebody who feels that, you know, they feel insecure,
forming a resistance against sort of the modern way of like all these
relationships and having intimacy before marriage.
Well, the thing is, you know, you really don't know what to do anymore. The rules are so many, so confusing. It's like, well, in this situation, do this, that. And I think most people are confused. You know, relationship advice is, you know, for me, giving advice to a young person, they would say, well, the rules have changed. You know, what worked for you wouldn't work for us. You know, we have to try harder, we have to put out more, and nobody really knows. And that is why it's so important that people know what the rules are. And because, you know, Westerners don't have a religion, there is no such thing as
boundaries.
Expected, respectable behaviour, because everybody has a different view.
Let me reformulate the question, because that's something you may be able to answer based upon the conversations I've heard you have. In terms of like, because you're very pro Sharia, because you feel like there's a lack in sort of like the European subsets of like ethics and morality. How would you basically, someone, and you're agnostic yourself, right? How would you go about promote Sharia, which has such a scary connotation around it, to a modern world, and convince them that, look, you may not believe in these, but I'm telling you, these laws are they've been tested over thousands of years and they do work, and they're particularly well suited for our period of time we're in. How would you argue that, or how would you maybe change your perspective? Because I've seen you do that quite well when you talk to people online to advocate for Sharia, and then you give your reasoning behind it.
Well, I think, for Westerners, they're concerned about immigration. It's like, all these Muslims coming, across the channel. And the thing is, you can use that to say, well, why are they coming? Because nobody here seems able to do any work, because apparently you're not having enough babies, or they're not educated or trained properly, and this is because your government doesn't care about you, and they don't quite dare tell you to, work hard to have more babies, stay together for the sake of the children and bring them up properly. And this is because you have no fault divorce. So, your wives can just say, well, you're boring, you're irritating, I'm off. And then, what happens to the children? So, that is, it's necessary for marriages to be stable, and so I think all divorce has to be fault-based. It can't just be, somebody saying, I don't, want to be with you anymore. I need space to grow, and rubbish like that. And I think just this would help, stabilise marriages, because if we were married and I wanted to divorce, you'd have to say, well, what did I do wrong? Or if you wanted to leave, but I mean,
that's very interesting.
And Muslims have a marriage contract.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of your
exactly. And we, for example, it's usually in the man's control, the divorce, to a certain extent, because studies show actually that women are more prone to ask for divorce or ask for breakup in relationships.
Studies in America.
Recent studies, it actually shows that women are more prone to ask for divorces and in relationships as well. So Islam has given the right to the man where he has free rights to talaq. So it depends what opinion you follow. So if he says talaq, let's say I've argued with my wife, talaq, I divorce you,
It's like a decree, nice-side decree, absolute, maybe.
Something like that, So
the
the
Jewish
thing is,
community
exactly. But in the
well.
Jewish community, there's something called the get,
the get.
And I was watching a documentary where Jewish women are absolutely locked in. They cannot get divorced unless the husband initiates it. In Islam, it's a bit different. In Islam, it says that the man has free chances in the context where he can use. So if he gives the first divorce, then they can she has an iddah period, which is 3 months, to reconcile. Reconcile can happen by, they had an argument, 1 month later, I don't know, she has to stay at the house, by the way, for example, if there's a child as well, and that if he initiates a kiss on the cheek, that means they are back together. So then he has another chance, he's got 2 left. If he uses those 2 again, then the third last one means you cannot be with that woman again. Now, the reason this
until
she has to go get married again, move on with her life. If it doesn't work with the next husband, then you have a right to reconcile again. Now, this is very interesting because a lot of people look at this and think, oh, the man's got the power. No, because the woman has a right to ask for divorce also. She can ask the khula, or she can go to a person of knowledge and say, this person not giving my rights, or he's not praying, or he's, sorry to be crude, but he's not sexually satisfying me. That's her right. She can say, this guy is not sexually satisfying me, and I fear for myself, I want a divorce. That can be stipulated, do you get what I'm trying to say? But the point is here, that was given, the rule for free was given because the Arab men, before Islam, used to divorce their wife, and the wife wants to move on, he'll say, no, I'll take you back. They'll have an argument, he said, I divorce you. The woman wants to move on, he'll say, I'll take you back. And he will keep doing this. So he was stopping the woman from moving on with her life with another man. So Islam came and said, you have free. And after free, she is moving on and you can't do nothing about it. It's actually haram for you to get back with her. And this is done, why? Because if a man knows that once I give the third divorce, my wife is not permissible for me and she's going to have to marry another man and be intimate. So that's something that will put a man off. So even though he has this, he can't abuse it because he knows after the third talaq, she's moving on. So these things are stipulated in order because there might be, look, women are emotional. I'm so sorry, feminists, if you're watching it, bro, I'm telling straight to your face. Women, I'm so sorry, if there's sisters here, I'm so sorry. They're emotional to a certain level. But what I'm trying to say is, they might say things they don't mean. My wife says to me stuff, bruv, and I'm like, man, you hurt me. She goes, I didn't mean it. What do you even mean? How you telling me that, demotivating me? I look in the mirror and I'm joking.
Chemical imbalance today, you will find plenty of men who are just like that.
What I'm trying to say is, they say things they don't mean. So I hear stories, but my teacher told me a story of a woman. She already had 2 divorces. The third one means finished. So she was begging. Actually, my chef told me the story. I didn't know if I should laugh or cry. So she goes to her husband and goes, divorce me. And he's like, no, I'm not going to divorce you. Because I know you're upset, you're angry, I'm not going to divorce you. She was begging him. Bro, she was begging him. And he left the house. He disappeared for a week. He came back a week before. Look, she's calmed down. She's insistent. She's like, look, let's not do it. We've got kids. It's the third divorce. That means, look, you're going to have to move on. Da, da, da. No. She was like, yo, you're going to divorce me if you don't. I'm going to say this. Guess what? He goes, okay, talak, divorce. You know what she did? She passed out. She passed out. They called the ambulance. And she started crying. Why'd you give me divorce? Bro, wallah, I wanted to bang my head on the wall. I was like, do you get what I'm trying to say? So the point is that Islam has a system in place in every aspect on your life when it comes to marriage, to before marriage, to seeking a partner. In there, even when you have arguments, God Almighty says, get the partner of your family and the girl's family and reconcile. There's steps and processes in place.
Yes, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, about the 3-month waiting period. So
Yes.
she's not pregnant. And, you know,
Yes, exactly. You're very knowledgeable. You should be a Muslim.
She is.
Claire, repeat after me. Ashhadu.
But like, I think if we contrast this now to the modern system, I forgot this term, but this term basically is a legal term. When people are married according to the law of the land.
Yeah.
I think impunity or something like that. So basically, the person who wants to divorce has to basically prove that the person either cheated you or has done something so bad that it cuts off the 5-year waiting period, something like that.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
It's very, very difficult actually to get divorced by the law of like the English law.
Oh wow, really?
I mean, they say irretrievable breakdown.
Yes.
But it's vague.
Yeah, it's very vague and it's so difficult to actually. So you basically, it's almost you have to push your partner to cheat on you.
Oh my gosh.
Things like that, and then the waiting period's about
Desertion.
5 years.
And it's not cheap, you know.
5
Divorce is
years.
not cheap.
Yes,
I was watching a documentary on YouTube. It's a multi-billion-pound industry, bro, and it takes years. There was one woman, she's like, I'm still in the divorce for. It's been 6 years. 6 years, bro.
So the reason why I'm saying this is because they might, to the viewers, they might think, well, what is this? This is tit for that. Like, okay, do you divorce go? It's like some camel or something. You know, your wife becomes a camel, you can just like fend off.
No, you can't.
It's not like that. The opposite of this is the other extreme.
Yeah.
People commit suicides. People losing loads of money.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why men don't want to get married. Because it's like almost they're going into marriage with like.
Why would you get married? Look, well, I'll be honest with you, yeah. Why would I get married? You want to get someone, intimacy is there. Look at it in Islam. Look at the beauty in Islam, Sister Claire, yeah? If I want to go and get married to like my wife, I had to go speak to her dad, yeah? The second day I was getting to know her, yeah? Marriage documentary, you guys are going to watch it, it's going to come out soon. I'm joking. Brother, please, good things come to those who wait. Allah is with the patient. 6 years, brother, no, get it right. Anyways, so look, I had to speak to her dad. Now, me speaking to her dad means that I'm not there to mess around. Because if I'm there to mess around, I don't want to speak to your dad, I don't want to speak to your mom, I don't want to speak to nobody in your family, number one. Number two, mahar, which is the dowry, yeah? She can ask for whatever she likes, literally, yeah? Obviously, man can't afford it, then she can't get married, yeah? So if she asks for £1 million, I say, I can't afford it, I'm so sorry, you're not getting married here, yeah? So she asks for whatever she likes, yeah? So my wife asked for something, you know, I had a bit of a heart problem there, but it's okay. But she gave me an installment plan. She said, look, I'll give you an installment plan. I said, look, thank you, you're very merciful. So mahar, which is her right, if she wants gold, money, because that's a security. Yeah?
Booking fee.
Yes, yeah, you want to call it that, sign like that, yeah? Number 3, sister, yeah? You do the nikah, which is a marriage contract, and not only that, you have to announce it. It has to be public, yeah? Okay, like I announced the marriage documentary, it's not out yet, but you have to announce it. If you look at relationships, it's the opposite. You don't speak to the dad.
Yeah.
You don't get, what are you going to get? Nothing. Get what, chicken and chips, bruv. Yeah, 2 wings, yeah? That's it.
Or even that, wasting 10 years of your life.
No, exactly. And not only that, for example, it's hidden. It's the opposite. In a nikah, you have to announce it. It's hidden. And then, why would any man in the Western world get married? Now, the thing is, how do you break the cycle? I believe the cycle is broken when you empower women, because the key is in the woman's hand. If a woman says no to sex, it's a no. It's a no. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So when we empower women, when we like read books like this here, Beauty Sick, and there's a woman in there who said basically, this is what she said. She said, I felt so ugly that I would sleep around with men because I felt worthless. So that means when you make a woman insecure and she feels worthless, she feels the only thing she can have to offer is her, you know, do you get what I'm trying to move to another girl and another girl and another girl.
But even the whole side chick, baby mama.
No, but exactly. And that's a whole different issue about polygamy, and men are polygamous by nature. And even in that era, even if you look at polygamy is there to protect the woman's rights. I challenge any feminist to come and I dare anybody. Because what does Islam say? Men are polygamous by nature. If you are going to have another woman, you do it the correct way. You can't have a side chick or mistress or girlfriend that you use in abuse. You go about it the first way you married your first wife, by going to the father, giving her rights, giving her a marriage, giving her rights, etc., etc., etc. And this stops the abuse of other women. This stops the abuse of other women. And when they don't do that, what do? They have side chicks, girlfriends, they use and abuse. Yeah, sorry, I got a bit passionate, you know. But Sister Claire, you're pro-Sharia. That's very interesting. First time I met someone that's pro-Sharia. You know, you should. Have you read the Quran before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you got one?
Translations. I've already taken one. Thank
Oh, you're already taking one. If you have any questions about Islam, feel free. You know, if there's anything like about God, you know, we can have a whole different discussion on that.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm really pleased that you mentioned the, you know, the divorcing, having to marry another man before you're allowed to move back to your original husband.
Yeah.
I mean, I was wondering, you know, about the purpose of that.
Yeah.
The purpose of what was it?
About the 3 times and then.
Oh,
stopping
okay,
it.
yeah, that's
marrying
good.
another man and then
Exactly, and that's the reason why. Because what it does is, even though the man has the power of the 3 divorces, and a Muslim woman has a right to divorce outside that as well, it's there because if he knows his wife is going to, the 3rd talaq means it's over and she has to go get married again, that is something that would put him off, that would deter him, because he would know that he can't abuse the 3 talaqs, because the last one that he would give means that she would have to go and marry and have intimacy with another man.
Yeah.
So it does seem in another perspective that he has the power, but not necessarily, because if he knows that she's going to have to move on with another man and be intimate, no man would want his wife to be intimate with another man.
And that's the law. And I'm sure that there are even, unfortunately, some Muslims who abuse that even. But
No, they do, man.
Yeah, but it's
they
there.
do. They have this thing where they go and get married just so they can go back to the husband. It's not permissible.
Yeah.
So they go get married to someone else and have intimacy,
Yeah,
and that man divorces her, so she can go back to her first husband, and that's not permissible. That you have to get married in the proper way of being with that person. Yeah.
But it's more to do with the spirit of the law, which is kind of missing in the West. I have to be. I'm Western myself.
When she
and that's
make
what
divorce
I'm
2
critical
times,
about.
they are in the risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
third one in the
things
risk.
I believe like you can borrow from other like traditions and
Yeah.
cultures, for sure.
Claire, I would like to give you one of these. Maybe if you have any questions about Islam, God, we can have another discussion. This was a separate discussion, but yeah. Do you have any questions on this topic?
I can't think of anything offhand.
No problem.
I didn't catch your name.
My name's Ali.
Ali.
Nice meeting you. I'm here every Sunday. Sundays we're here. You can come visit us. Thank you very much, Claire, for your time. Thank you. Just have the mic. Yeah, I know. Everyone forgets. Don't worry. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye.
Take care. As you get.
Give you
Oh, she took one.
Oh, okay. To who? Oh, is it for non-Muslim?
Okay, brothers and sisters.
Okay.
Amazing conversation. And let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Ali,
Yeah.
I think we met someone else last week
Yeah.
who was interested in living an Islamic life in terms of its
Yeah.
ethics, but culturally she considered herself Christian.
Yes. No.
So I find this very interesting that
Yes.
more and more people
Yeah.
were warming up to this very
Well, they have to, bro. The thing
scripture.
is, it's like a disease that is spreading. When the disease is spreading, you look for the cure. And sometimes you see the cure in places you would never imagine,
Yeah.
which is the Sharia.
Yeah.
A lot of people are scared of it. They have no
Yeah.
idea of it,
Yeah.
but they don't know it's a system that is, if it's applied properly, it works. And the only thing they think about the Sharia is stoning,
this
etc.,
is,
which have they no idea about. If somebody going to the American Constitution
Yeah.
and seeing about, death penalty, electric,
Yeah. Also, this reductionism that the Sharia somehow is this punitive law
Yeah.
that is only focused on
Yeah.
chopping people's hands off. I mean, this is something that you watch from the 60s.
Bro, it's a horror movie. You know
Yeah,
the movie Saw.
exactly. Thank you.
That's what. Once you stop watching horror movies.
The Sharia it's a very loose system that benefits human beings. You know.
That's correct. So next time, brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
from Salam Corner.